Hey everyone, it's Monday morning. Yes it is. Don't check your calendar. Don't ask your boss. Don't let anybody tell you different. Just trust me. It's time for another episode of Crowdfunding Countdown, and this one is sponsored. That's right, some poor sucker was convinced that I had anything to offer whatsoever, and that is of course KungFu Poker. So thanks to them for sponsoring the channel. And in return for all of the half-eaten hot dogs that they've given me to say this, I get to answer the question that I'm sure you're all asking. What's KungFu Poker? Play the music. Wouldn't it be horrible if their soundtrack was like copyright and I got a copyright claim on this video because of it? Let me come up with something off the cuff to say about KungFu Poker. KungFu Poker is a free, beginner-friendly Texas Hold'em app that you can play anytime, anywhere with 100% play money. Wait a minute, push that off screen. You get to compete with real players and enjoy the excitement of winning. Log in daily to unlock ad-free bonus chips, spins, and more. Because who doesn't love a poker game that's realistic for beginners to thrive? And you can also use the code CHRIS for 30,000 free chips, which seems like probably a heck of a lot of money and you'll never need anything else. Start to excel in your poker skills with KungFu Poker now. There'll be a link in the pinned comment below. There'll be a link in the description. Basically, it's a free Texas Hold'em app. So if you want to convince them that I'm worth spending money on, other than the 4 times that you will see this exact same ad, download it, use my code, I guess. I really wish that I knew that they were going to give me a code. They didn't let me know because I absolutely would not have used the code Chris and would have used the code Slippery Jim. And now I'm just hopeful that they'll want to re-up the ad spot so that I can change the code to Slippery Jim. Maybe if enough people click the link and get it, I can convince them to sponsor me again and change it. So if you like poker, check it out. But more importantly than KungFu Poker, I would burn down 7 KungFu HQs for you too, and that's of course my newest patron. We've got a new patron shout out as well. Thank you Kyle and Jonathan for joining the Room Aboard Patreon, for supporting the channel. Patrons like you are even more of an integral part as to why this series exists. All of my patrons, I love you more than your parents, your spouses, your children, your pets could ever fathom, and I appreciate you all the time. And so I'm back home. I'm back in my regular studio. It's just my living room, but you'll also see that the shelves behind me have changed a little bit because the wonderful Renee decided to build me some shelves while I was away, and so that's pretty cool. That's also why I'm sitting on this side, because if I leave the frame, you'll see the giant gaping hole where, oh, I guess it just looks like my chair, yeah. You'll see the giant gaping hole where we still need to add in a few more shelves. But enough of that, we gotta get to the games before everybody leaves. I have one more funny thing that was at my door when I arrived that I want to talk about, but I'm going to save to the very end because it's just wonderful.
You talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking about the shelves.
You like them?
Yeah, I like them.
You know what?
What?
That little corner?
Yeah.
Perfect spot for a kitty. Sorry. I just heard you talking about me. I hope they're impressed.
She built those from scratch. I'm impressed. I certainly am not that handy. I have been called handsy, but then I got thrown out of that theater. Anyway, this week in games, we only have Kickstarter projects. The 2 projects over on GameFound are not funding. They're probably not going to fund. That's Amygdala and Pandemonium Estate. Nobody wants those, and if you do, well, I'm sorry, you're not going to get them because they're not going to fund. So let's talk about the games that are funding this week, starting off with Draconis Invasion. Now, this is specifically a campaign for the Glory expansion. Draconis Invasion is actually a deck builder that was out in 2016. Then they had another expansion for it in 2020, and now this is a second expansion for it. It just adds a bunch more cards, and, you know, it looks pretty cool. It's been fairly well rated on BGG, and I was going to make fun of them for the 8.7 rating stat that they're throwing around because I was going to look at it, and I was really hoping there was like 2 ratings. But there's like 76 on the expansion, and that kind of shows that people are willing to invest in the system and are impressed by it, are impressed by the changes that keep happening. This is just a small little expansion, I think, honestly, to justify a reprint. And it's very similar, I feel like it'll feel very similar to Dominion in that you have 1 action on your turn. They have this A, B, C, D, E, F system that just serves as a nomenclature for your actions and the different actions that you can take. The A being action, and then you can take 1 of buy, campaign, defeat, or eliminate, which of course defeat and eliminate are two different things. And then what kind of is interesting about this game is you can take any gold that you didn't spend on acquiring new cards or spending them on current cards, because not only do you have to purchase the cards, you have to have gold in your hand to activate a lot of these cards as well, which kind of gives it a different twist that I haven't seen. And I don't know if I'm going to find to be annoying or not. Probably not, because it keeps your hands and it keeps your gold being a necessary thing, and yet it might still be annoying because you want to get past your original one resource, and if you always have to have that resource, I'm not quite sure. Jury's still out on that one. But the cool thing is you can choose how much gold you put back on the top of your deck and will draw into your next hand. So you can have that cycle and you won't have to lose that extra gold if you know what cards are coming up. But then again, it stops you from cycling your deck. So that seems like an interesting decision to me, at least a minor one. And I also like the feeling of the gold, and I think it's just because they're in values of 10 instead of 1. It's like, yeah, it does cost me 40 gold to get this thing instead of 4, right? Which is the normal sort of deck building cost. They suckered me in, and I will admit it, that I like it better. The variety of the amounts make the setting of this medieval era fantasy game feel more realistic. And honestly, it doesn't seem like a horrible price. The base game is $40 US, $53 Canadian. Then they have the Wrath expansion, which just gives you angrier versions of all the cards. No, I wish. Can you imagine? What a horrible standalone expansion. It's just different art of people, of angry farmers. You start out with 6 farmers, but then there are 6 angry farmers. Honestly, I think that would sell. I think that would sell in quite a few games. There are quite a few games which just have like standard art, which I would love to see a cartoonish, angry, wrathful version of them. But unfortunately, it's not that. It's actually kind of like a mini campaign mode. It sort of reminds me of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle in these sort of chapters that you'll get to work your way through and adding additional content to the game. So that's pretty cool. That's also $30 US, $40 Canadian. And then the Glory expansion is just adding in a few modules, which is really one that lets you put the card you just purchased right into your hand instead of your discard pile, and so it keeps that cycle going. And then you can also get characters which give you special abilities, and that's $15 US or $20 Canadian. And these seem honestly like reasonable price points to me. The shipping is $17 to $21, which is on the higher side. $25 Canadian for the big bundle if I were to get that. So everything together would be $138 Canadian. And while these parts all seem interesting, remember that's a large price point to just jump into a game that feels somewhat interesting, even though the higher shipping price probably makes you want to do that or lean towards that, because of course it does. But the base game for me would probably be around $75 or $73 Canadian. They don't actually have an estimated shipping for that, but you can kind of guess. And that's not horrible, right? It's like that $59.99 plus tax or $64 game plus tax. And at that point, it's still kind of a pass for me, but this does look interesting. And if you like deck builders and you like this theme, this might appeal to you. That finishes Wednesday, August 24th at 12:59 p.m. Now, just quickly, I'm not actually really going to talk about this because there are a total of 8 backers on this one. That's the Forsaken Souls trading card game. We're trying to innovate the trading card game genre where you get to color in your own characters. So just like painting minis, now you can apply that with cards whose color can immediately fall off if you don't sleeve your cards and you continue to shuffle them over and over. They just bleed into the back. Because of course you're coloring with paint or pen and then immediately shuffling, right? I don't see why you wouldn't. And I was like, that's kind of a cool concept in it. But with the backer count being 8, 5 of which just want a thank you card, it doesn't look like it's a concept that's really drawing people in. I mean, the game, it's not really worth talking about, so that's probably an element to it. But I'm wondering how much crossover there is with coloring and painting minis, because I can see the similarities between the two, and I would be horrible at both, but I think I would personally be more interested in painting minis rather than coloring, because I feel like you're doing something a little bit more dynamic. So I wanted to talk about this, not because of the game, but because of that question of the coloring cards or the painting minis, and if there is any similarity between the two. I know my girlfriend has a coloring book, and there was a fad of having an adult coloring book, and that might be a nice way to unwind and relax as well. So I'm curious. Let me know what you think about that concept. It intrigues me, but I also don't think we're going to be seeing that as, the standard moving forward, or many adopters at least. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we have a game called 535, which is a very simple trick-taking game. You're going to play sets of cards, and those cards can either be pairs or triples or whatever, or runs, right? And if you lay down a run of 2, I guess it's not really a run, I guess it's 2 cards in sequence, but the next person has to play a run of 2 that's higher in order to beat it. But the interesting part about this trick-taking game is that instead of playing a card to beat it, you can add a card to it to kind of strengthen it. And it doesn't matter if someone played 3 4s, if you've got the last 4 and can make it 4 4s and nobody beats it, you actually win the trick. And I think that's a little bit of an interesting idea. Whenever a player runs out of cards, everybody counts points in their hand, and the person with the least amount of points wins, basically. It also seems very simplistic. So for $20 US plus $9 shipping, 12 to Canada, so $41 total Canadian to get to my door, why you would ever pay that for a card game as sort of honestly middle ground as this, I do not know. Maybe your parents never loved you as a child, but no, that doesn't make any sense because I'm not getting it. And well, you know, if you have people in your family who like golf, the game golf, they might probably enjoy this. But honestly, you could just play the card version, because even though the cards go up to 15 and there are 5 of each with 4 players, there's only 4 of each, and there's 13 cards total. They're just different point values. So if you know the point values, you can just play this with a standard deck of cards. And why would you need a specialized set for something like this? But hey, if you're interested, that also finishes Wednesday the 24th at 10 p.m. Next up, we have Pirates of the Caribbean 3, the board game. But because they weren't sure about licensing issues, they just decided to call it Davy Jones' Locker. And this is one of those games like Jaws that takes place in 2 acts. In the first act of the game, you're going to be exploring the islands, going to various ports, and basically leveling up your ship. It's a cooperative game where you will have to defeat a Kraken, but you get time to prepare to defeat the Kraken before the Kraken emerges from the depths. It might emerge unexpectedly due to event cards, or you might have the full 6 rounds to prepare, and then the Kraken will emerge. You'll flip the board because the Kraken obviously destroys every single island and port and other ship in the universe except for your crew. It was lucky that it was your crew who was preparing to fight this Kraken and not any of the other crews. That's very lucky. It's very lucky that you were specifically gathering stuff to fight the Kraken rather than that other team who was just smoking and drinking. So once the Kraken and all of its tentacles emerge from the depths, like all of those late night animes that I end up watching, wait, what? You then have to take down the Kraken. And so the general structure of the game is that each turn you're going to have 3 actions, and on the first act you can't repeat actions, but on the second act you can, because you'll have actions like repairing your ship or sailing away and getting the hell away from the Kraken who keeps swimming towards you. And then you'll fight the tentacles and whittle down its health. Every tentacle you destroy takes away 1 health. Or you can charge right in at the Kraken and just punch it in the face and hope that you deal like 8 or 10 damage to it, or however much health it has. And then the Kraken can destroy your boat and leave your meeple just lifelessly floating in the sea until one of your friends comes and picks you up, and then you're revived and you can use all your cards and equipment that you've gathered because, of course, you've held on to them in your clutches in the sea. And the Kraken just, well, he's got real boat blindness, so he just goes for boats, while you go for broke and try to smack him as hard as you can. It seems fun. It seems fun. I like the exploration that will happen. A lot of that is card driven and sort of random card events that it feels. So it kind of feels a little Betrayal on House of the Hill-esque in that first act. And then the second act, the tactical choices feel a little bit more interesting than Betrayal. So it's $75 US, $98 Canadian. And in that price, you do get 50 metal coins, which I wish weren't included in the price so that it could be a bit lower. $19 US shipping, $23 to Canada makes this around a $130 Canadian game for me to get. And it definitely looks fun, but I think I would want it for half of that amount. But if you like the pirate themes and you didn't get Dead Reckoning, well, maybe this is the game for you. That finishes Thursday, August 25th at 8:59 a.m. Now, next up, we have a game called Word Up. Word Up! Which is competitive just one, with a few twists to it. Basically, you're going to roll some dice, you'll get a number, and that will be the number of letters of a word that you have to write down. And the words will be determined by these cards. You'll flip them over, and it'll be vegetable, breakfast food, and you'll roll the dice, and it'll be 5. I'm stealing this from their playthrough. And so for breakfast food, you could write toast, or bacon, or fruit, or apple. Whatever kind of falls into that category with that predetermined number of letters. But there are 2 catches. Each letter is worth a different number of points, so you'll want to include those letters in your answer, and you only have 60 seconds to do so. And 2, if anybody else writes the same word, you get no points. So you may think of a good one, but judging by the group, maybe somebody else will use it, maybe somebody won't. Likely you're going to just try to write the word that has the most points and hope that nobody else gets it. But I think it seems like a pretty fun word game, honestly, where you desperately try to only use words with the vowel U in it. For two reasons, because U is worth 5 points instead of 1, and you are the only vowel I want at game night. Anyway, that's $23 US, $30 Canadian, which doesn't matter because it only ships to the US, and the shipping's fantastic because they're just going to ship it locally. $6 US shipping, so $29 total if you want to get that word game to your door, or you could just get some whiteboards and probably play it yourself with a deck of code names and some dice. But I think it is a fun concept. And honestly, if you're going to make up your own version of this, you probably will just want to spend the money on it anyway, so that people can see it on the shelf and say, what's that game? Rather than you pulling out a wet Ziploc sack filled with used Kleenexes. Used because you've written on them. Don't worry, it's not that gross. Why is it wet? I wouldn't think about that too much. Anyway, if you're interested in that, that finishes the 25th at 9 a.m. Now, next up we have Junk Drawer, where you get to organize your 4 drawers in a perfect polyomino pattern. Although with the examples they give in their video, I've got a bone to pick with you, Junk Drawer. Especially this pink drawer. Can we pause it? He asks Chris from the future. Because future Chris is even more tired than current 11 p.m. Chris. Okay, let's keep it moving. If you take away those giant plastic safety pins, which I don't know what they're used for measuring, they kind of look like they can measure things, and my Freudian slip of a brain can only imagine one thing, but I've already made one sort of slip of the mind joke this episode, so to double down on that would just be preposterous. But that's not a junk drawer. That's a drawer that has been meticulously organized, and then they took some of those things and just threw it on top because they didn't want to go through the hassle of reorganizing it. There's clearly a spot in the bottom left where those ovals go, and that's it. Then you move one thing to the side, it's completely organized. What kind of junk drawer are you living in? Certainly not the one that I was brought up in. It's just, we'll mess it up a bit. I mean, I get it. That's what's stopping me from really committing to doing the one cubby calyx challenge the way that it is, and God intended it to be, by stuffing everything into a wet Ziploc sack and calling it a day, but just the reorganization, I can't bring myself to do it. But I probably will. Spoiler for that video. That'll be stage 3. Foundations of Rome, stage 1. The Real Thing, stage 2. My monstrosity abomination version, stage 3. And honestly, someone can steal that idea. That would be great. And then I wouldn't have to do it. They could just give me credit. But you've got designated bins. Your drawer clearly has a pink LED light that activates when you pull it out, that shines upon your organizational prowess. We get it. That's the designer's junk drawer, and they just wanted to slam in there and say, oh yeah, well, it's so messy. That's like when you go over to somebody's house and they say, oh, it's been really messy, and there's a bowl. There's one bowl in the kitchen sink. And then you come to my house after I've been away for 5 weeks, and Renee has had full reign to just tear apart everything. We definitely freed up some space by getting rid of those calyxes, but now the calyxes have to go somewhere. And if they go there, then those other things have to go somewhere else. And honestly, the time it has taken for even to just clear a spot for me to shoot is madness. Get out of here, junk drawer. You're clean. You ain't full of junk. You're full of beans. I just did it for the rhyme. Okay, enough of that. Let's move on to actually talking about the game. There are 4 quadrants, so you actually get 4 chances to organize a perfect drawer, and you will be turning up sort of goals for each one of those 4 that you have to meet, and then there'll be a stack of cards. Everybody has the exact same items to start. There'll be a stack of cards that you'll flip up, which will reveal which item you are currently placing into which quadrant, and you have to choose based upon which ones you're placing where the optimal place to go is. I'm a bit confused as to why there are 100 spaces to fill, and according to me, who counted all of the potential size of pieces that are left, at least in their breakdown, there's like 73 to 75 actual squares that could be filled with those pieces. Maybe not all were shown. I assume you would have to have, in order for this game to work, I'd assume you'd have to have more spaces on your polyominoes than there are actually available, and that it is working with what you have been dealt with to try to achieve the different goals and to choose. It doesn't currently seem that way, so I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Maybe they're just so oddly shaped that it will be weird, or maybe the goals are varied enough, like you want to keep pieces isolated in one zone. You want empty space in another zone, so it has to deal with the negative space, which is a little bit interesting. It seems okay, but it's a decent price, 35 bucks US, and then $10 shipping to the US. Kind of makes it a real contender if you like polyomino games. It's $20 shipping to Canada, so $71 total Canadian after conversion, which probably too much for me. But if you're interested, that finishes August 25th at 10:59 a.m. Moving along, we have a game called Primordial Secrets, where this is another deck builder-esque game, but there are a couple neat twists to it. Basically, every card will have a blue stat, which is kind of their attacking stat, a purple stat, which is their sort of defense stat, and then a pink stat, which is their purchasing power. And you'll draw 6 cards on your turn. You'll choose which 3 you're going to keep as your defenders and which 3 you're going to use as your attackers, and then you'll choose who around the table you are attacking as well. And the goal is really to pick out the person who you think will not be able to defend against your attackers, because if the defense power is more than the attacker power, one of the attackers will be killed, and whoever killed them gets to keep that as like a trophy, a sacrifice trophy, and if you get 6 of those, you win. Or if you have 4 more attacking power than the defender, you also get a secret, and if you get 6 of those, you win. So there's 2 win conditions that you're kind of doing a push and pull. They have a great how to play video on the campaign page, really well done with lots of examples, gives great visuals, and gives a nice real sense of how the game is going to be run. And then whatever your attacking crew, your visiting crew, whatever it is, whatever buying power they have left, whether they died or not, you can then use that buying power to buy cards from the market. And that's also how you're going to determine how much do you want to send. Does your opponent know that you're going to send that much? Can you convince your opponent to put their good cards as defense and then just not visit anyone at all and leave yourself out of the game? You can pick up these extra relics that will give you different abilities throughout the game. It seems pretty cool. And I also like any game which allows me to say, oof, I have a really good hand, literally every turn, to just be completely obnoxious and trick people into attacking me or not attacking me. Their stretch goal was also to add playmats to the game, so that's also pretty cool for those of you who like playmats. This is 39 bucks US plus shipping, $18 shipping, or 21 to Canada. So it's really 57 US and then $78 Canadian to get to my door, which is too much. But hey, it still looks fun. So that finishes 11:44 a.m. on August 25th. Now, next up, we have the solo-only game. Half of my patrons just exploded with joy and glee, called Halls of Herga. And they describe it as being in the same vein as Robinson Crusoe, This War of Mine, and Dead of Winter, in that it is a worker placement, bag building, and tower defense style game. And you're going to have 11 days where the game will escalate as you go on. You'll have the mobilization of all the troops, you'll have their first attack, and then you'll have the final siege where you have to outlast and survive long enough for help to arrive, basically. If you have enough healthy defenders left, you win, which is great that they have to be healthy and not just defenders. They have to have some sort of quality of life to them after the war, which, you know, hopefully everybody can. And basically there'll be a number of things that you have to manage. There'll be worker placements that will benefit you if you use the correct workers, if you draw the correct workers out of the bag and then assign them to the spots where they're the most efficient. Like a hunter is better in the wilderness, so he'll be able to optimize your snow shoveling. You just have to defend against the onslaught and just survive somehow, which is a good mantra. Not a great episode of Walking Dead, but a good mantra. The rulebook isn't great, to be honest. Neither is the campaign page. The campaign page is even less. I would watch a playthrough if you're interested. Maybe it's because I've had a long few weeks and haven't slept as much as I would have liked, but I found it really kind of difficult to chunk through and didn't end up reading the whole thing. So it's 50 bucks US for this game, or 65 Canadian. It's also $8 for a print and play if that's more your style. $9 shipping to the US, $18 shipping to Canada, or maybe it's 18 US. They have all of the shipping in various native currencies, but they don't specify what dollar it's in, and usually I just assume that it's in the US dollar because, let's face it, we're about to become an annex to the States any day now anyway, which I would have loved 15 years ago, so I could have applied for Survivor more than I have now. And I would have won back then too, and now everyone on Survivor is as clever as me, and my ginormous ego won't allow me to see it. That will be my downfall. But it's raised $75,000 Canadian, which is pretty good. The higher price point for a solo-only game might have scared a few people away because, let's face it, it's easier to justify spending money on a game that you can play with your friend and by yourself than just on something you're going to play by yourself. You can't say, oh yeah, I'm getting this for my girlfriend who lives in Armenia, who definitely exists and will play it when she comes to visit me. I can't wait to play all of these deluxe Kickstarters with her because she asked me to get them, and how could I say no? It's hard for her to get them in Armenia, where she exists and lives. That's the reason I got them. This one, you don't have that excuse. You have to say, yes, I am getting this for one and only one naughty bad boy or wicked woman who deserves a little treat. Anyway, if you're interested in protecting the Halls of Herga, that finishes 3 p.m. August 25th, Thursday. Now, next up, we have Paragons Age of Champions, and they're billing this as a high fantasy deck building trading card game for 2 to 3 players, which is actually closer to deck construction, but you know, are we gonna fault them for the wrong term? Yes, we will. It's about to get real. But there's 120 unique cards here. There's no booster pack. There's no pack where you're just randomly hoping to get those good cards. You get everything in this all-in-one box set. You get all the cards needed to play the game. So it's very different from all those trading card games. Oh, so it's a board game. No. It's a trading card game where you have all the cards in one box and you get the whole box, and it's unlike anything you've ever. Yeah, so like any board game. No. You don't understand. We're fighting back against the Kickstarter FOMO and the direction that this hobby is going, preying maliciously on the fear of missing out and preying upon people's wallets, forcing them to purchase more and more stuff over and over and over again. So by us giving them this all-in-one package, we will never prey upon that desire. We will never make you feel like you need to purchase more and more. We will never be that insidious gaming industry. But in fact, we're here to save it. Actually, yeah, that is a really noble goal. That's really good. You're never going to make people feel like they need to purchase more than this just one thing. Like ever, right? Well, I mean, if it does well, then we will release a few expansions. And we'll probably have another campaign where you could then get everything there. And then we'd probably release a few more expansions if it did well and people wanted more. And we'd probably continue that cycle for a little while. But you wouldn't have to spend as much as you do in the other trading card games. Oh, I see. What a noble pursuit you have there. And hey, don't worry, you can also stick around to the end of their long campaign video where they have the slowest text moving across the screen to tell you that if you scroll down, you can see more information about the game. Which is important knowledge for people to know. It really is. I would have left without it. Anyway, this plays like a draft tournament 1v1 card game.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
Yeah, but there's also a 3-player free-for-all mode that, lets them plays 2 to 3 players in the box and maybe accesses a different user group. I am being unneedlessly sassy, but you know what? It's late. And being mean is the only way I can garner enough energy to live. Who hurt you? Many, many people. Anyway, you pick a class, you've got warrior, mage, whatever, and then you're going to draft additional mercenaries to be in your deck. And then you'll do the standard 1v1 battle thing. It's £36 for the base set, $56 Canadian, which isn't an unreasonable price. It really isn't. Even if they do add expansions, this is their pitch. When they add expansions, it'll be cheaper than you having to seek out that super legendary rare version. Or you could get those super legendary rare versions right now as an additional add-on in the holo foil, because everybody loves tournament rewards in the, drafting battle scene. So then you can add these special foil cards that you just keep off to the side and haven't added and give them to the winners, and so they have a special shiny gold card in their deck. But of course you can get the base set too without the add-ons. Perfectly fine as it is. You just don't get the shiny exclusive holo foil tournament cards that you're going to want to play with. I mean, to be fair, I think the art in this game is really top-notch, but that's enough of that. That finishes August 26th, Friday at 12 p.m. Next up, we have a game called Goblin Goldrush, which for $42 US total, $30 plus 12 shipping, you can grab yourself a zany game that looks like Munchkin meets Snakes and Ladders meets My First Dungeon Crawl. It's mostly My First Dungeon Crawl. You're going to run around and kill monsters and roll some dice. If you have a family, you may want to check this out. Unfortunately, my entire family has been kidnapped by bears, and they have not yet been returned, and that has been going on for a very long time, because I have not acquiesced to their demands. So because of that, we're moving on to our next game, Dungeons of Doria, which is, my third dungeon crawl, I guess we'll call it. But before we get into the game, I need to really comment about the video, because the first line of the video tells us that Doria's land is filled with dungeons and sellers. And it really took me a long time to get past that, to get on board. Because I was filled with the question, why are all these dungeon raiders raiding the dungeons when there are so many sellers to raid? And the worst thing you're going to find in there are tutorial level rats. If I know any sort of fantasy seller, I know that there are only rats in there and they are probably lower than my current level. And then there's going to be a bunch of wine and a bunch of loot. Don't go into the dungeons. That's where the monsters are. Go into the cellars. Why are you not in the cellars? Side tangent. I played this RPG, a number of sessions of this RPG, The Lair of the Blue Medusa, or The Maze of the Blue Medusa. Zach was running it. And I love my character in that. He had 0 charisma, and I expected him to die, so I called him Grunt Grumble. And I only spoke like, Grunt Grumble, how's it going? And then he tried to talk his way out of everything. But you roll for a specific dog companion that you start with, and one of the people who we were with, his dog, his special ability was just that the dog was worth 150 gold. And gold is like your experience points. And so instead of going into the maze, into the actual maze, starting the story, I made such a push to just stay and do our nightly guard duty and not seek on this adventurer because it seemed too scary. And we could just take this guy's dog and sell him and then all get experience points and like really not have to worry about it whatsoever. And I'm really surprised that pitch didn't work. They did want to go into the dungeon eventually. And, you know, I guess we had an adventure, but that's what visiting the cellars reminds me of. What would Grunt Grumble do? Anyway, in this Dungeons of Doria, you do actually get a lot of content. You get 4 kind of full scenario books, or campaign books, I should say. There are 8 scenarios in each one. You follow a mini campaign, and there's also a book of 20 one-shot scenarios. So 52 scenarios is not that bad. And it seems like a, you know, honestly a fine stat-based dungeon crawler. You're exploring a variable map as you go through, lots of replayability, but the only downside to this one, honestly to me, is that it is a fine standard dungeon crawler. And I imagine that you have dungeon crawlers that you probably will like more than this. I don't necessarily see anything in here that is innovating the genre or really pulling me in. And I think it's quite telling that one of the main quotes on their campaign page is, if you like loot, you'll like this game. And that's actually a great quote, because that incites the hoarder in me and the loot grabber in me. I like loot. Who doesn't like getting mounds and mounds of loot and just drawing card after card and seeing what you find? But if that's the unique spin on things, I think I have other dungeon crawlers that I would enjoy more mechanically than this one. But if you're looking for something that is like sort of D&D feeling, because you will have the stats of your character sheet and you get to choose how you level up your character, this might be one to check out. It's fairly expensive for me. It's 69 euros, $90 Canadian. The best shipping is $12 to the UK. It's $20 in shipping to the US. And then it's $37 in shipping to Canada. And that is, say it with me, too much shipping. I told you I had shirts made. Anyway, if you're interested in that one, that finishes Monday, August 29th at 1 p.m. And finally, we have Little Flower Shop Duel. This is a BYOP, a big yop. Cardi B's gonna write a song about that one. But unfortunately, the BYOP does not stand for Big Yummy Octopus Parents, but it is Bring Your Own Pencil. And I can't tell you how many people I've had to turn away from my house for game night because they forgot to bring their own pencil. Sure, I have a collection, but that's not the point. You have to pay the pencil toll to enter. Actually, the whole purpose of this Bring Your Own Pencil, or why they're referring to it as such, is because you don't need anything else but a pencil and these sheets of paper to play this $5 print and play. Because a lot of print and plays you need a dice, and that requires you to track down a dice or download a free dice rolling app on your phone, which no one has access to. So bringing your own pencil, really helps cut those costs and eliminates the tediousness that dice can bring. And Little Flower Shop was a game that was my pick of the week way back when it was on Kickstarter. I don't know when that was, but I thought that one looked fun. This one, I think, looks less so. And I think I'm not really on board with just the Bring Your Own Pencil version of things, although I do think this is a better implementation of that concept. It's just that I feel like without that random element, the game sort of becomes solvable. If you're just marking down things and then scratching them out on your own piece of paper, it feels a bit solvable. This one is better though, because there will be a communal sheet in the middle that will have 8 shelves representing 8 rounds. And on your turn, you're going to pick a shelf and you're going to take an item from that shelf and add it to your flower shop. and then the other person will take a flower from that and add it to theirs. And so there will be this back and forth of picking shelves, so you will be able to block the person from getting the necessary item that they need. It just still feels like it might be a little too solvable, which maybe that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing in a $5 print and play. You play it until you're done, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. But it usually is kind of a mark against games for me. I think this is definitely the best BYOP design and the closest to making me interested in it, but I'm still like not over the moon with it. But if you like it, hey, check it out. The finish is 5/27, August 29th, Monday in the PM. And that's it. That's it for the week. We have made it. Now, every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you, the pick for me being the thing that I'm the most interested in, and the pick for you being the thing that I think if you bought, you wouldn't regret. That's a better way of phrasing it. Usually I've been phrasing it as something that I want you to buy so I don't have to spend money on. But I think I'm going to make it more that you won't regret it if you do purchase it. Either or that I hope you don't regret, really. I can't give you a guarantee because all I say is nonsense, but it's somewhere along those lines. So the pick for me, the one that I'm the most interested in this week is going to be Primordial Secrets. I think there's a lot of really neat things happening in this game, and it's something that I would like to try. I like the idea of this deck building and this running out and fighting your opponent. I feel like it might be better in a 2-player game rather than a larger group, because if you have one person who's just really sucking, you're going to always send people there. Although that could pose a really interesting thing. Everybody knows we're going to send the person, we're going to pick on the little guy and not defend their own stuff. So by doing that, maybe you've left yourself open and then the other person can snipe in and attack you. So I take that back. Maybe it will be interesting at a larger player count. And this realization is what makes me excited and interested to play it. I don't care about the playmats, but I know some people will be excited about that being in the stretch goals. And $39 US, it's not a horrible price point, providing the shipping's okay for you. So that one I think is my pick for me. And the pick for you, I will do a pick for you this week. I'm going to give it to Draconis Invasion because I think similarly, I like deck builders. I think this one looks fairly solid, and I think it looks fairly reasonable for each chunk. Again, I don't think you should dive in fully onto each chunk, but if you like deck builders and you can't get enough of them and you've outplayed all of your deck builders, I think there are some interesting things happening here as well. Some neat tweaks to the mechanics, but that keep it in that core deck building, easy to pick up thing that a lot of people will have as well. And it's easy to just write on the cards A, B, C, D and show what of each extra action you get while playing specific cards. And I think also paying for them intrigues me. I don't know if it'll end up being a good thing or a bad thing, but it intrigues me enough to say, yeah, that's the pick for you. Sure, why not? I'm being generous. So that's pretty much it for the week. Thanks so much for being here. Sorry this was a day late. Just be glad it wasn't 2 days late. I expect I'll be up until the very early hours of the morning, but that's okay because you're friggin' worth it. I appreciate you all being here. Let me know if there's anything you're excited for this week or upcoming, or if I missed anything. I always love to hear it. And to finish us off the episode, I want to give one final thanks, one final little shout out. This is the thing I was talking about at the beginning that I didn't read at the beginning, but I wanted to read now. I got an awesome little package from a patron of mine when I came back to my house, and in it there was a note from Mrs. Chaotic Neutral Scott. If you're in the Discord, you'll probably know. Hopefully he doesn't mind me sharing it. I thought it was funny. It says, "Hey Chris, Chaotic Neutral Scott and I were watching your video about your origins trip. We got to the part where you left your favorite hat at Olive Garden and decided you needed a replacement. Of course, you're probably getting your old hat back by now. They're still holding it for me, and I will go get it. But we have enough hats. Enjoy." So this hat that I am wearing is, of course, if you can see it, an Olive Garden hat, baby. It's a pretty good replacement. Thank you, Mrs. Chaotic Neutral Scott. You're the friggin' bomb. It made me laugh a heck of a lot when I got it. So, I will cherish this hat more than I've ever cherished. Where is it? This hat. Look, it's immortalized on my shirt. But I will get that one back. So, you know, it hides the hair poking through. And I'm very appreciative of hats when I've had to be in a show where I look like a schlub and haven't been able to cut my hair. So thanks to Mrs. Chaotic Neutral Scott. And thanks to everybody for tuning in once again. You're on the bomb. This will probably screw with sound, but I don't care. It's the end of the episode. My name's Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but I do have a replacement hat for now. and I will see you in the next video. Bye!